Will Seraphine become the most OP bot lane carry? How will Fiora, Veigo, and Zeri shape up after their nerfs? We'll be breaking all that down along with 18 other changes to give you guys an update on the solo queue tier list thanks to the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most up-to-date stats. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. The skin line set to drop this patch is called Snow Moon and will feature Caitlyn, Illaoi, and Kayn. We'll also be seeing Ashen Knight Pantheon hitting the Rift. Night Harvester saw a really nice buff in 12.11 and it's going to become even better for 12.12. The build path will now feature a Fiendish Codex in place of Blasting Wand. The reason this is such a nice buff is due to the fact Amp Tome builds into Codex. Since Blasting Wand costs 850 gold, if you were on a reset and didn't quite have enough to purchase it, you'd be forced onto the map with a bunch of unused gold. From now on, if you're sitting on something like 700 gold, you'll always be able to grab that Amp Tome and be a little stronger than before. Riot has these Predator changes listed as adjustments, but they're looking more like nerfs to us. Predator max movement speed is going from 45% at all ranks to 25 scaling to 50%. Definitely a nerf, as 20% less move speed early is not worth the extra 5 later on. Damage is being altered, going from 40 scaling to 120 to 20 scaling to 180. The bonus AD ratio and AP ratio are each being increased by 5%. Cooldown on Predator is increased by a whole 30 seconds in the earlier levels. Taking everything into account, scaling buffs in compensation for early game nerfs is not going to be net positive. When you think about the champions that run Predator, like Gragas, he wants to be active in the early game. Gragas isn't looking to scale for late, so Predator losing value early is a big nerf to the Fat Man. To be honest, these nerfs are likely being issued to try and combat Singed mid right now, as he's running rampant with over a 55% win rate. Riot doesn't want to directly nerf Singed too bad and kill him for top lane, so they are nerfing Predator, but it comes at the expense of other champs like Gragas. Gragas would have been loving 12.12 with the Night Harvester buff, but this Predator change puts him a step back. Riot has a couple nice buffs lined up for Yorick this patch, as Mistwalker's base health will be increased from 100 scaling to 185 to 110 scaling to 212. Mistwalker's health based on Yorick's health will be increased from 15 to 20%. Mistwalker movement speed is going from 300 to 325. Maiden base health receives a similar treatment, with it increased from 300 scaling to 3000 to 350 scaling to 3300. Maiden health based on Yorick's health will be increased from 70 to 75%. Finally, Maiden chase range on E is going from 1600 to 1200. So much of Yorick's power comes from his Mistwalkers and Maiden, so now that they'll be tankier, it provides Yorick with even better side lane pressure. We don't expect Yorick to become meta as a result of these buffs, but he'll be a good A tier top for 12.12. Although few people are playing Mundo right now, his power level had shot up a ton due to the tank item buffs and Grievous Wound nerfs, so Riot is looking to tone him down a bit for 12.12. Passive regen is going from 1 scaling to 2% to 0.8 scaling to 1.6%. Our base health increase is being lowered from 10 scaling to 20% to 8 scaling to 15%. Considering Mundo's high standing in 12.11, our analysts don't expect these nerfs to be enough to alter Mundo's tier list placement, as he will remain in S for the time being. Fiora had a couple patches to thrive in the OP tier, but that comes to an end in 12.12. Passive max health true damage is being lowered from 3 to 2%. On paper, this may not seem too bad, but as you can see in the background gameplay, it's a 10 damage nerf as early as level 3. Fiora will be losing a good deal of power this patch and will be bumping her down to S tier, but she may even be on the verge of falling into A. Singed nerfs are set to drop, with his W slow change from 60% at all ranks to 50 scaling to 70%. Our base stats are going down by 10 at all ranks, and when you take into account the Predator nerfs, Singed won't be liking this patch. From S to A tier is what we see fit in regards to Singed tier list placement. With Fiora falling out of the OP tier, it leaves Tahm Kench and Darius as the godlike top lane carries. Many of these tanks top laners like Poppy, Shen, Ornn, and Zac have been reaping great benefits from the 12.11 item buffs and are really underrated picks right now. Compared to the last few patches, we don't see any massive movement on the tier list, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as everything settles out. The top 3 low elo picks for top lane are Garen, Mordekaiser, and Tahm Kench. Tahm, Mord, and Darius are some of the best bans for the current meta. Amumu is going to be in a great spot for 12.12 after these buffs, as his Q mana cost is lowered from 70 at all ranks to 30 scaling to 50. That's huge for the early game because you have to remember Amumu has 2 Q charges, which was costing 140 mana in previous patches. Now it only costs 60 mana for both uses, which is even less than it costs for 1 in 12.11. Ultimate damage is also buffed, as the base damage will be increased by 50 at all ranks. Amumu will be moving into S tier, locking down one of the stronger jungle positions. Ivern is looking to make a push back up the tier list this patch, as Riot has a bunch of buffs planned. Passive base health cost is being lowered from 23 to 20%, while the base mana cost is buffed, going from 34.5 to 30%. E-Shield is increased from 70 scaling to 190 up to 80 scaling to 220. 30 extra shielding at max rank is going to be massive, especially since E is the spell Ivern maxes out first. Daisy's base health is being increased from 1,250 scaling to 3,750 to 1,300 scaling to 3,900. Daisy resistance is seeing buffs as well, going from 15 scaling to 90 to 20 scaling to 100. We've had Ivern down in the depths of C tier in recent patches, but a move into B is what we have planned for 12.12. A few minor Jarvan buffs are headed alive, with his mana per level going from 40 to 55 and passive cooldown being lowered from 6 seconds to 6 scaling to 3 seconds based on level. Like Ivern, Jarvan also has been one of the weaker C tier junglers from 12.11, so these buffs will be enough to give him a push into B. Newest champion addition in Bel'Veth has been absolutely dominating the lower ranks in 12.11, so a couple of alterations are planned for 12.12. Auto range is going from 125 to 175, while health regen drops from 8.5 plus 0.85 per level to 7 plus 0.7 per level. Passive value of stacks is changed from 0.25 scaling to 1.25% attack speed by level 18 to 0.28 scaling to 1% attack speed by level 13. This in turn buffs Bel'Veth for the first 14 levels, but from then on becomes weaker. You will now be able to gain passive stacks from large minions. A bug fix will be issued to Q to prevent Q from causing R's true damage on hit to deal double damage. E damage per hit is going from 8 scaling to 20 to 8 scaling to 16. R explosion missing health damage drops from 25 scaling to 35% to 25% at all ranks. Bonus auto range from R is lowered from 50 scaling to 100 to 50 at all ranks. Void Remora health is nerfed, going from 70% to 50 scaling to 70%. A bug fix change to R is being issued to combat Bel'Veth from losing R's bonus health if she devoured a Void Epic Coral while already in her true form. All in all, these changes look to provide Bel'Veth with some added power early on, but in exchange, tone down her scaling strength. It makes sense Riot's taking this approach, as scaling nerfs do a better job at targeting low MMR. In regards to Bel'Veth's tier list placement, we'll still expect her to be a good jungle pickup, and she'll be placed in our A tier as a result. Viego's skirmish power is being targeted for 12.12, with his passive heal on possession lowered from 2.5 to 2% of his target's max health. R bonus damage is nerfed as well, going from 15 scaling to 25% to 12 scaling to 20% missing health. The WE combo will no longer provide instant stealth for Viego. Viego has been one of the more dominant junglers for a while now, so it will be nice to see a bit of a shake-up in meta, as he will be moving from S into A tier. Tank Shaco had actually become the most optimal build over the past few patches, so Riot has some alterations planned to try and combat that. Armor growth is going from 4.7 to 4, while health growth drops from 103 to 99. Q-AD ratio is going from 25 to 40%. E-AD ratio is increased from 70 to 75%. AP Shaco will be buffed as well, with his WAP ratio going from 9 to 12%. EAP ratio is going up as well, from 50 to 60%. If you're a Shaco player who enjoys the assassin style over tank, which I'm sure most do, these buffs will provide a nice uptick in strength and see Shaco moving from B into A tier for 12.12. The jungle tier list will feature Nunu, Diana, Volibear, and Wukong as the OP picks of the patch. Quite surprising that both Volley and Wukong avoid any nerfs for 12.12, so you have another patch to take advantage of their high power levels. Elise and Nidalee will become slightly stronger due to the Night Harvester buffs, but not to the extent where they move up the tier list. We definitely recommend staying away from Predator if your champ has an alternative keystone for 12.12. Rammus, Volibear, and Shyvana are the best junglers to escape low elo the fastest. Volibear, Diana, or Wukong are the highest priority bans of the patch. The low elo queen will be buffed up for 12.12, as Annie's QAP ratio is going from 75 to 80%. Pet buffs are a common theme for 12.12, as Tibbers will have his health increased from 1200 scaling to 3000 to 1300 scaling to 3100. Tibbers resist is going from 30 scaling to 70 to 30 scaling to 90. Annie has always been a really solid S tier mid for the majority of elos, and that won't change for 12.12 despite the buffs. Heimer has one of the lowest play rates for any champion, sitting below 0.5%, so Riot will be buffing him in 12.12. Turret health is going from 150 scaling to 575 to 175 scaling to 700. Turret base damage is bumped up as well, going from 6 scaling to 18 to 7 scaling to 23. E cooldown drops by 1 second, going from 12 to 11. Despite Heimer's abysmally low play rate, his power level isn't that bad, especially as a champion who can output consistent damage in a more durable meta. If you like playing these less contested picks, then Heimer will be a great A tier option for 12.12. Katarina is the only other mid laner changed this patch, as Riot is looking to give back priority to more offensive setups. Kat's passive dagger bonus AD ratio is going from 75 to 65%. E damage is increased from 15 scaling to 75 to 20 scaling to 80, but the total AD ratio drops from 50 to 40%. Our bonus AD ratio is buffed, going from 12.8% per 1 attack speed to 16% per 1 attack speed. Our on-hit ratio per dagger is going up from 25 scaling to 35 to 28 scaling to 38%. Cat will remain on our A tier for 12.12. Anivia and Victor are the two most dominant solo queue mids. Singed, being a 55% win rate mid laner on 12.11, will likely still be a strong pickup even after the nerfs, so we've got him slotting into S. Scaling champions like Veigar, Kassadin, and Cassio continue to rise a cut above the majority of solo queue mids, as they fit in really well to this more durable meta. Veigar, Malz, and Annie are the top 3 low elo picks for mid. Yone, Victor, and Kassadin are a few of the better bans to consider. Despite Seraphine being played way more as a support, her power as an AP carry bot lane for 12.12 is going to be ridiculous. Seraphine's E cooldown is being changed from 11 scaling to 9 seconds to 10 seconds at all ranks. ECC duration is buffed, going from 1 to 1.5 seconds. These buffs aren't necessarily that insane, but considering Seraphine is already an S tier bot lane carry in 12.11, she's moving into our OP tier for 12.12. A few Lucian nerfs are penciled in, with his base AD dropping from 62 to 60. Q damage falls off at the later ranks, going from 95 scaling to 235 to 95 scaling to 215. Q is the spell you max first on Lucian, so his mid-game will become significantly weaker as a result of these nerfs. Lucian will be falling from S into A tier. The hotfix nerfs were not enough to dethrone Zeri from her high standing, so a few more changes are lined up. Health regen and health regen growth are both being increased. W base damage is being increased from 10 scaling to 150 to 20 scaling to 160. W total AD ratio is lowered, going from 150 to 130%. Even though the base damage on W is being increased, due to the W total AD ratio nerf, the change ends up net negative. Not so bad throughout the early game, but you will feel it more later on. S tier is where Zeri will be placed for 12.12. Jhin and Twitch will be front and center, leading the way as the best traditional marksman, while Seraphine joins them in the OP tier as a result of her buffs. The COG hotfix buff from last patch has turned out to be pretty impactful, so he will be slotting back into S. With Lucian and Zeri now nerfed this patch, other than Twitch and Jhin, the rest of the ADC meta is looking relatively balanced compared to most times. We have a ton of champions in the A tier right now due to the fact there are so many on a good power level, not too broken but not weak either. The best low elo bot lane carries are Veigar, Misfortune, and Seraphine. Jhin, Zeri, or Twitch are the best bot lane bans right now. Blitz, being the support Riot chooses to buff, is a bit of a head scratcher, as his Q damage is increased by 15 at all ranks, and ultimate damage is going up by 25 at all ranks. We had recently dropped Blitz into A tier due to his inability to thrive after the durability update, but thanks to these buffs, he'll be moving right back into S. Janna had eclipsed a 54% win rate in 12.11, so it's no surprise to see a few nerfs headed her way. W movement speed is going from 6 scaling to 12% to 6 scaling to 10%. W slow is nerfed, going from 24 scaling to 40 to 20 scaling to 36%. E shield strength will be hit as well, with the base changed from 75 scaling to 175 to 65 scaling to 165. AP ratio on E is lowered from 60 to 55%. Nerfs to point and click abilities always hurt a little more, and because both of these nerfs are exactly that, we expect Janna to lose a decent chunk of power for 12.12. Janna will continue to be a great solo queue support, but she'll be moving from OP into S. A shield buff in exchange for a heal nerf is what Riot has planned for Yuumi, with her passive shield increased from 56 scaling to 360 to 60 scaling to 380. E base heal is going from 70 scaling to 190 to 70 scaling to 150. A buff to Yuumi's early game, but a nerf later on, which should end up slightly net negative, but not enough to warrant a major shift on the tier list. And the final change we have for 12.12 is a much-awaited nerf to Soraka. Riot's finally circling back on Soraka's ultimate as it will no longer remove grievous wounds. To compensate though, Soraka base heal on ult is going up from 125 scaling to 275 to 150 scaling to 350. Very much like the Yuumi changes, these alterations will either positively or negatively affect Soraka based on the situation. For some games where the enemy team builds no grievous wounds, it's a buff, and in games where the entire enemy team stacks them, it's a nerf. Raka will be falling from OP into S, but she will remain one of the better solo queue supports. The complete support tier list features Renata Glask and Senna as the two OP champions. Although Seraphine is a much better pick in the bot carry role, her strength as a support rises for 12.12, and she will be moving from B into A tier. With enchanters like Janna, Soraka, and Yuumi all nerfed for 12.12, Sona is one to watch who doesn't get as much attention but is a super good pick post durability update. For more of an underrated gem, look into Taric right now, as he's seen a serious boost in strength due to his 12.11 buffs. Top 3 low elo supports of the patch are Soraka, Brand, and Zyra. Renata Glask, Senna, and Yuumi are all super good bans for support. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. Now that you're completely up to date with the solo queue tier list, good luck out there, and we will see you in the next one.